Dependency theory versus modernization theory. Modernization theory has its roots in the 18th century, during the era of Enlightenment. The theoretical framework was created to explain transformation and development in society and define how change influenced pre-industrial and industrial development. Like other transformational theories, modernization theory revealed its unique view on the final stage of the evolutionary process because it was associated with advancement meeting the needs of Western industrial society. The concept of modern society, a more developed society that significantly differs from a traditional vision on social development. During the industrialization era, the development process was closely associated with modernizing society and increasing its income. The idea of modernization derived from the principles of developing and changing societies within the state. Internal changes, therefore, should become the primary sources of economic, social, and political prosperity. Therefore, developmental changes are premised on social evolution, which expects continuity and progress in social change. As a result, increased complexity and specialization in human activities in political and social spheres are among the main stages of social transformation. The school of modernism was encouraged in the second half of the past century in the United States. Different ideological wings agreed on fostering industrialization and technological advancement to create a prosperous society. The modernization process also influences an idealized vision of society. Modernization theory faced rigid criticism from methods that do not recognize developmental stages of social evolution. Specifically, many other approaches, particularly those supporting dependency theory, did not support the view of independent, internal development using industrialization and technological advancement. On the contrary, the dependency theory was more concerned with using the resources of vibrant economies to accelerate the development of poor societies. Their opposition to the idea that developing economies are primitive versions of advanced countries was also confined to the tradition, even orthodox vision of development. As a result of these debates, dependency theories focus more on the development of free market relations and place a lighter emphasis on state sovereignty. In other words, first-class countries should be engaged in helping third-world countries cope with their financial and social problems by establishing equal market relations in the global arena. At the same time, supporters of the dependency school of thought also argue that underdeveloped economies should not be subject to external pressures. Instead, they should be less connected to the world market to adhere to their personal needs. Regarding the above, the dependency theory is based on the idea that developing nations can provide cheap labor and natural resources for developed countries to use. All these assets are inherent attributes of developed economy progress and, as a result, they become developed at the pace of poor countries' development. The means of integration into the world system identified the nature of emerging economies, but not the combination as itself. The differences in views between modernization theory and dependency frameworks highlight the advantages of the latter over the modernization process. First, the dependency theorist was more consistent in explaining the outcomes of industrialization for society. Second, they are more accurate while representing the term underdeveloped that refers to a continuing relationship of exploitation where at any one level in the chain of the full economic surplus is not available for reinvestment. The criticism of the strict demarcation of societies into traditional and modern did not allow modernization theory to face the problem of colonialism. In this respect, the dependency theory has provided a new path to establishing relationships that ignored the imperial past and to create a new experience of maintaining exploitation by sustainable structures of capital, interventions abroad. The surplus values introduced were the primary privilege of underdeveloped economies engaged with the relationships with the prosperous economies. By rejecting the flow of resources between the rich and the poor countries, the modernization theories faced a problem of controversies based on the interconnection of development. Understanding countries as unique structures allowed the states to move beyond the established standards and norms of development and provide alternative solutions for advancing economies and raising their incomes. Being under the influence of the limited stages of development, the dependency theories introduced a more effective way of meeting the needs of both developed and underdeveloped economies. Further, dependency theory justified the structural formation of economies because the organization of weak economies is premised on the external influences, but not in internal phases of development as it is represented by the modernization theory. In particular, modernization theories failed to take into consideration the concept of interchange of resource between countries that can place the poor countries in a specific social, economic, and political context. Placing society in a vacuum, therefore, does not allow to predict the essentials for economic development.